Good afternoon, everyone. I am Saraswati, Secretary General of the Madras Chamber, and a very special thanks to Mr. Ravi Ramachandran, Commissioner of Income Tax Exemptions. Thank you so much, sir, for joining amidst your busy schedule. Just for the information of the Chief Commissioner and some non-members here, the chamber is the oldest chamber in southern India, second oldest in the country. And we have a number of expert committees who act as our think tanks for the chamber on many domains. Here we have two committees representing this program, the CSR committee and the direct tax committee. And the idea is to share the knowledge, and this had been discussed both in the committees. This subject, the title says all about the content we are going to discuss. So we have been discussing internally. So we thought we should have a sort of an educative program, and that's why we are here. So I would probably stop here. Request Mr. Vikram, the co-chair of our direct tax committee, to say his remarks, opening remarks, and also introduce our special guest for the day.
I welcome everyone to this unique event, which is basically being organized by our friends at the CSR committee and the direct tax committee. And the aim of this event is to kind of study, deep dive, delve into the intersection of tax laws, company laws. So that's what we're trying to achieve by the event today. I hope that gives you a broad overview and a background of what we're trying to achieve today. Having said that, it's my privilege and my honor to welcome the most distinguished personality and apt person to address, headline, and keynote this event, Mr. K. Ravi Ramachandran, CIT Exemptions. Welcome, sir. Thank you for coming here. I need to, it is my privilege to welcome him and give you a brief profile of Mr. Ravi Ramachandran, whose accomplishments started from a very young age. Right in his 8th standard, he topped the district level at Rayapapanpatti, Madurai, at then Madurai district, and he got secured scholarships right into NIT Trichy. If you want to show your age, I guess you can say it's REC Trichy. After that, in 1986, he was a design engineer at HAL and worked on light combat aircraft. Most people would know this Tejas, as it is called. And fortunate for the Indian government, he joined the IRS in 1994 and was Assistant Commissioner Income Tax at Bangalore, and then Deputy Director Investigations at Bangalore, where he won awards for his investigative work. Now, in 2004, he was selected for deputation at the MHRD, where he served as a director of school education and played a very important role in the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, SSA, and the implementation of the midday meal schemes. In 2009, I believe he went for a master's, postgraduate master's in public policy in the University of Minnesota, Minneapolis. And again, as usual, served it with distinction. And in 2013, he was posted as the Director of Investigation in CBDT in New Delhi. In 2015, in Bombay, he supervised matters related to investigation of foreign assets and banking sector assessments. In 2017, he was transferred as the Chennai Commissioner TDS, where he initiated a number of reforms, including the integration of the national portal with the state government portal, thereby alleviating the state government employees' hassles for TDS credits. And now he's presently posted as a commissioner of income tax exemptions at Chennai. We can't think of a better person to address this and keynote us today. But it doesn't stop there. More importantly, he's a multifaceted personality, and he has to his credit short stories which are published in national newspapers, award-winning photographer for wildlife and travel. And in 2012, if I'm not mistaken, he was the liaison officer for the Ministry of External Affairs and the Indian Army to take a 60 pilgrim trip, to lead a 60 pilgrim trip in high altitude trekking for the Kailash Manasarovar Yatra. We are honored, sir, for you to spend time with us and grace this occasion. Over to you, man.
Good afternoon to all of you. I'm really delighted. Respected Mrs. Saraswati, Secretary General of MCCI, Mrs. Rajasri Nadarajan, Chairman CSR Committee, and Mrs. Vidya Durai, Co-Chairman CSR Committee, Mr. Arvind Srivatsav, Chairman MCCI Direct Tax Committee, Mr. Vikram Vijayaraghavan, Co-Chairman MCCI Direct Tax Committee. Your organization has as many as hierarchy like us in the government setup. This presentation, I'm truly honored for having invited me to make a keynote address for this event. on changes on the tax laws and CSR related challenges. When my co-participant, Mrs. Subhashini, is covering technical and legal matters, I thought I will give a perspective on related to CSR in the background of philosophical, historical, and cultural context. Because the law, the biggest income tax being infamous, I should say, in court for litigations. In my personal opinion, much of the litigation starts because we study the law as per the letter. We don't study the law as per the spirit of the law. So it is very essential for proper implementation as well as proper compliance that we need to understand the spirit of the law. So in that backdrop, I would give a broad overview in the philosophical and historical cultural context for CSR in India. With this head note, let me start my short presentation on CSR in India. Let me start with the quote from Vallalar Ramalinga Swamigal. I think most of you can follow Tamil, I guess. Otherwise, also I can supplement. Dharmamigu Sennayil Kanda Kottathul Valardala Mungu Kandavele Tanmugathu Tuyamani Unmuga Chaivamani Sanmuga Devamani. He is praising the Chennai. I'm new to Chennai. Anyway, all Chennai should be proud of. Vallalar praises the Chennai as a Dharmamigu Chennai, the very charitable Chennai. So it is hard for me to be in Chennai, in such a glorious city, to talk about charitable institutions and charitable activities. And for our Indian society, charitable activities are not a new one. It is in fact born with us. It is in our DNA and blood in a bigger way, I should say. And when I study literature, there's a plethora of glorification, eulogization of charity in our normal day-to-day life. I just want to give a few pick up from Sangam literature. Let me start with Tirukkural. Paguttundu Palluyur Ombudal, Nulor, Toguttattul Ellam Thalai. The chief of all virtues or knowledge or whatever virtue you can imagine is partaking food. Food here means you should not restrict the meaning to the physical food. Basically, he is stressing the point of distributive justice. What we call Sattanidhi, Samuganidhi, everything is embedded in this. Partaking of food that has been shared with others. We should share our, not only food, whatever we have, share with other fellow human beings to make life happy for all. And Thiruvalluvar did not stop only sharing with human beings. He went one step far beyond. He says that preservation of manifold life of other creatures also. Paguttundu Palluyur Ombudal. So Indians have a rich tradition of doing a charitable activities and sharing whatever they have with others. In fact, I go a step further. In a Purananotru Padal 173, there is a Pannan, very generous, benevolent man. He is famous for his charity giving. Killi Valavan is going to take the charity from him. In the Purananotru Padal, the Killi Valavan is praising Pannan as Pasippini Marthuvan. I love that employment of the phraseology. Pasippini Marthuvan. Aviyar tells that Pasi itself is a disease in our famous song. So this who are charity givers are called Pasippini Marthuvan. How this Valavan is blessing the charity giver, Pannan, Yan Valum Naalum Pannan Valiyave. He is telling God, please take away part of my lifetime, give it to Pannan so that he will live for a long time, do more charity. So to that extent, the charity played a very, very vital role in our virtues, in the moral compass of Tamil society and Indian society. So we all should be proud of it. It is embedded in it, but during the course of the time, there was a small disorientation. Probably we are trying to bring back to the past glory of our Indian sense of distribution and charity in our every walks of our life. After colonization, the 1947, when we got independence, a huge poverty and inequity stared at us. an underdeveloped nation with a huge population, with so much diverse cultures and disparity in economic status. The rulers of the country was having a biggest challenge, how to kind of take out our country out of the poverty, make it as a glorious past like our great country. So the chief architect of our constitution, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, very quintessentially summarizes the challenge before the leaders of the country at the eve of independence. The political democracy could not last or will not last unless the social democracy lay at its base. Our society is very known for very diverse and inequitous in social structures, but how to make it a level playing field? That is the only tool and the most potent tool for this task is economic improvement, economic development. For that, how to make an economic development, make the country a developed one. So that initial days, because of the bad experience of being colonized for a long period of time, the government took over the responsibility of being a welfare state to provide all the goods to the citizens. In fact, he took the command and control of the economy, and it was the chief driver of the economy to make the poverty eradicated. It was going on 40-50 years. Then during the course, the government did a mid-course correction and liberalized the economy, where it gave more space to the private players. And with the private players coming to the picture, the globalization, privatization, the command and control was shared. The government shared its command and control of economy with the private players and private corporations. Natural corollary, next step is now with the CSR, the government wants to involve the private players, private corporations into developmental activities also. We have a huge developmental, social developmental objectives. The government alone cannot do this, so through a CSR is one of the tool, a legislative tool, through which it mandates the corporations also get involved in the development projects through the way of CSR, and it is in alignment with United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which highlighted challenges of achieving economic prosperity, social inclusion, and environmental sustainability. These challenges cannot be met only by the government. That is why government thought the corporations which are successful in their economic and commercial activities should have a good knowledge and large resources and capacity to contribute to the sustainable development in lifting the poor out of the poverty and increasing expectation to proactively and socially responsible behavior from them. That's why CSR was brought in the year 2014 in India. This CSR concept goes beyond the earlier held view that the sole responsibility of the firm is only to the profit to shareholders. No, it involves being a socially responsible for the development of the society as a whole. In fact, I would like to quote Lao, Chinese philosopher, famous quote: "If you give a hungry man a fish, you feed him for the day." That's what the government was doing in the direct benefit transfers. You dole out to the people, and they eat for the day. That's all. But if you teach him how to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. That's exactly the rationale behind bringing a CSR, where the corporations which are successful in the domain achieved great heights in the entrepreneurial activity can help the poor, help the marginalized section of the society, and empower them with the technical knowledge and resources to pull them out of the poverty and develop their entrepreneurial skill. That corporations are the better place, better persons to do it. In fact, I remember that Kaizen, which is the famous Japanese management technique, which says that instead of dreaming and trying to do a big things, you do a small things. The incremental change happening in a multiple centers will bring a wave of positive change. So instead of government being a centralized setup trying to do welfare activities, rather distribute that power to the smaller corporations, the local level, who have a good level of ground knowledge and the capacity and resources to do a positive change in the society. That would be better to create a wave, a tsunami of positive change in the society, With this conceptual background, Government of India brought this CSR in and made the corporation as a partners in the development activities, which hitherto was monopolized by the government sector. With this context, let us come to the numbers. 2014, the CSR was brought in the legislation for the company law. And 2014-15, the first year being 16,000 companies were eligible companies for participating in the CSR. They contributed, they spent 10,000 crores. Whereas in 2019-20, the companies, number of companies, eligible companies became 22,000, and amount spent on CSR is 24,000, more than double. It's fantastic in the matter of 5 years. It is such a phenomenal growth. Though the quantum wise compared to what the government spends on the social sector, it is less, I should say, but nevertheless made a good progress. In fact, 2021, the figures are slightly discouraging. Could be probably because of corona pandemic or contribution to PM cares. But I think it is we made a satisfactory progress in terms of numbers, though we always aspire to improve it further. The GSR spent the geographical distribution wise, as usual, in the west and south, they are doing a good amount of CSR spent, and the top 10 states. Probably, I was slightly disappointed to see Tamil Nadu in this 4th or 5th place, whereas generally we come in the 2nd, 3rd, be it in all other economic indices. But nevertheless, we need to. I think in the days to come, Tamil Nadu will get back its glorious position in CSR spent also. Maharashtra being leading state, Andhra Pradesh next, Gujarat, Andhra Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Karnataka, then comes Tamil Nadu. Probably in the next years to come, we will improve our performance. And listed, unlisted company, if you see unlisted companies, surprisingly contributing 67% of the total CSR, whereas listed company contributes only 33%. If you see the spread, the distribution, CSR expenditure wise, 684 companies fall in the bracket of up to 50 lakhs of CSR expenditure. The number of companies spending more than 500 crore is 2 companies only, and all of you know which are those 2 companies. These are the top 10 companies which are in the leading in CSR expenditure. Reliance and Tata Group, they are the leading, and of course Infosys, ITC, Wipro, these are the top 10 in expenditure. The sector, which are the sector these CSR expenditures happening? The lion's share goes as expected to the health and education and environment, and also next in PM Relief Fund and Clean Ganga Fund. Swachh Bharat is another major attraction. Rural development. These are the leading sectors to which the development CSR expenditure is happening. This is the time series of CSR expenditure in Tamil Nadu, which was we are almost in sync with the Indian pattern, the national pattern. 2014-15, our CSR expenditure was 539 crore, whereas it reached 1,110 crore, more than double, in sync with the national performance. Now, this is having seen the number. What are the behavioral patterns or trends in CSR compliance so far in India? Let us briefly look at it. Many firms in India were undertaking CSR activities voluntarily even before CSR came in. That all of us know about it. And what are the major CSR activities which are going in a very big way? Of course, I'm giving an anecdotal evidence of this CSR activities largely happening in India. It is not an official version. Please mind it. Being a commissioner, I did not go into specific of any particular company, but it is what is I gathered from the articles and research studies on CSR which is happening. So I thought I'll pick up a few companies to show what are the trends in CSR compliance. Of course, Tata and Reliance are the big leaders in this CSR expenditure, and all of us know about their activities and scale of their performance in CSR field. I exclude them from this small bullets. Aditya Birla spends 250 crore annually In fact, they claim to have developed a self-sustained villages, around 5,000 villages, reaching out to 7.5 million people, out of which 60% people are supposed to be below poverty line. Many public sector companies like ONGC, Indian Oil, NTPC, GAIL, they are undertaking renovation and maintenance of cultural heritages and temples which are around their operational area. In an innovative way, many multinationals are taking what we call within quotes strategic CSR. They are using CSR as a tool for image building or to improve their bottom line. For example, Coca-Cola in 2000, early 2000 had a controversy that pesticide residues were above the permissible limit. So, as a damage control or maybe to build up their image, they went in a big way of using CSR fund for water stewardship program and water harvesting in the village rural areas. And Hindustan Unilever in their famous Shakti project, they are identifying the village rural women using CSR funds. They are training them to sell soaps and detergents. Of course, they'll give priority to their products. Nevertheless, they are developing entrepreneurial skills among the rural women, which leads to hygienic livelihood as well as women empowerment. These are the broad, landscape within which these leading big companies use the CSR for making positive change in the society. Overall, the CSR law resulted in sharp increase in CSR expenditure, and the CSR expenditure has gone up over time. And smaller firms exhibits lower complaints than the larger firms. This is all the research studies which is published in the public domain. And on an average, firm that spends less than 2% CSR before the law increase their spending after the law. The good guys who are already doing charitable activity even before CSR law continue to do the good activities and in fact scaled up their operation. On the other hand, the firms spend more than 200 CSR, more than 2% CSR before law, reduce their spending after the law. Some firms over comply by spending more than 2% on CSR. Another point which the research studies done by the public domain shows that after CSR comes into the picture, the donations and other normal charitable activities has come down. People are channelizing and shifting their normal philanthropic activities and other donations into CSR funding only. Now, what are the future roadmap with having a, by and large, I should say, satisfactory performance so far, a good start, though it is 5 years and Corona was a slight setback in the road of CSR. Still, future many challenges are there, which is awaiting us, and we should both the government as well as corporation should put their best might to overcome these challenges and make this CSR a grand success. In fact, India is the first country to legislate and make it the CSR as a mandatory. That is a very unique feature of our corporate governance in India. And what are the future roadmap? CSR is a game changer, transferring the gains of corporate to the society with an syncing with the national priorities as per SDGs. And what is required in the future is the shift in mindset. And still, many of the corporations, maybe it is not an allegation or accusation, should not say, kindly take it in a positive manner. What the researchers in the field of CSR observes that there should be a change in mindset from the statutory obligation. CSR is a statutory obligation. From that, the mindset should be changed to a proactively creating sustained impact projects. Voluntarily, that being a part and parcel of the role to play the development of the country. The third is streamlining of information on activities permitted and providing clarifications. And the timely clarification makes the compliance easy for the people, and so that they don't get kind of distressed or having compliance pain. So the smooth mechanism should be there. And fourth is another innovative idea, a proposal to set up social stock exchange like our SEBI for identification of impactful CSR opportunities on pan-India basis. In our field interaction with both corporations as well as NGOs and as well as the beneficiaries, we find that there are a lot of pockets of disconnect where many corporations are having resources and they are skeptical and they are finding it difficult to identify the right platform to deploy and right projects and right activities because they are all the time busy with their own corporate activities. And at the same time, there are many genuine NGOs have a committed service mentality, but they do not know how to source the resources, where to go. And many beneficiaries are marginalized sections of the society. They do not know how to approach corporations or how to approach NGO. So these kind of disconnects are there between among all the stakeholders. Probably a proposal to set up a social stock exchange would bridge all those things and iron out all those differences and information asymmetry which is existing among the stakeholders of the CSR map. And last is funding and research, funding research and technology incubators. The beauty of incubators is you will have a multiplier effect on social, economic, environmental outcome. And at the same time, nurturing, funding incubators which will have a multiplier effects. At the same time, we need to continuously monitor the impact. We should not fund the project and start the project and leave it to the whatever inefficiency or something. Regular, because corporate being all experienced and having a expertise in managing the projects and taking to the logical end and able to operate in the most efficient manner. Probably you should give your expertise in getting these projects, reaching its impact and benefiting the society at large. Now I'll end my short presentation with a story of a Buddha on true generosity. What is true generosity? Once Lord Buddha announces that he is going to receive charity, alms, by his own hands. So definitely this is a big announcement. Everybody is queuing up that somebody is going to give it on the hands of Buddha a charity. The kings, princes, and big war generals, everybody is coming, rich man, merchants, everybody is queued up. And Bimbisara, Ajatasattu, all the big kings, all coming with all precious stones and gold and all wealth. They're coming, laying it, standing before Buddha. Lord Buddha just waves their hand and tell the attendants, okay, take the wealth and see them off. But in the queue, there is an old lady comes with a half-eaten pomegranate. And everybody is shooing her away. And that when kings and princes and merchants are coming with such a rich goods, why are you coming with torn sari and with the half-eaten pomegranate? And but Buddha stops them and tells the lady to come up. And he gets down from his chair and goes down to the lady and extends his hand and very eagerly, smilingly accepts by hand the half-eaten pomegranate. Then says the Lord Buddha, the measure of true generosity is not size of your wallet, but the true intent of your heart. A small act of kindness done with a genuine love and concern is much greater than something done simply to make yourself look good in the eyes of others. When I read the story, I remembered the famous Purananuru description of a scene, which reads like this: தென்னிப் பரப்பின் இமிழ்தரை பெருங்கடல் ஆகுவ நீர் வெட்டரே ஆவும் மாவும் சென்றுகன் கலங்கி சேற்றோடு பட்ட சிறுமை தாயினும் உன்னீர் மருங்கின் அதர்பலவாகும். நிறைய பேருக்கு I don't know how many of you can follow. What it says is the sea is very big, very mighty, it has got a lot of water, but that is not useful to the human society. Whereas a small pond, a puddle of water in the land, which is muddy by these cows and other animals drinking, and people want that, consider that as a more precious, and they worship that as a god. So the wealth, what you have, great wealth, unless you share it with others, and the pleasure of sharing with others, it is of no use. That is our Indian tradition. That should go on in our DNA. That is the way our Indian society eulogize and praise the charity and alms giving. I should not say alms giving, it's a charity, just sharing. I wind up my thing with the Buddhist quote: before giving, the mind of the giver is happy. While giving, the mind of the giver is made up peaceful. And having given, the mind of giver is uplifted. Very revolutionary idea what Lord Buddha gives. While giving, The receiver may get benefit instant, but it is the giver who gets more in the final. And for the giver, giving is a powerful source of merit, which with long-term benefits to make this India a great country. And let us all partner in development of India as a great nation as it was in the past. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
First start by thanking our Honorable Commissioner of Income Tax, Sri Ravi Ramachandran sir. What a splendid talk, your long experience in public policy, income tax, and the knowledge in this space of charity. And with all that, you've been inspiring us from the very purpose of CSR, linking to our history of charity and its importance in the country, linking it back to Sangam literature, Purananuru, and then quoting Ambedkar and stories from Buddha's life. Plus, of course, very beautiful infographics summarizing the CSR status of the country. You brought so many insights in your power-packed talk, inspiring us and giving us a very good start. And thanks for being here, till the end, and also answering even the last query, which which should not get missed out, saying that how you have gone all the way, your department has taken it up and brought it up, escalated, and what is the status and so on. And thanks a lot, and it's really truly inspiring for us. Of course, we'll be coming back to you with more such requests. I don't think we've done enough of justice in tapping to your wisdom and knowledge. We surely want to listen to you about many facets of your knowledge, Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, and your operationalization of midday meal and all that. I think we can tap a lot for our CSR from you. Okay, thanks a lot, sir.